Good afternoon. Welcome to the South Shore Clean Cities Electric Vehicle Charging Infrastructure webinar. My name is Ryan Lisek, Project Manager for South Shore Clean Cities, and I'd like to thank our speakers for taking time to share with us their expertise in the EV market. Today we have Brian Levin, Regional Director of the Midwest for ChargePoint, Josh Cohen, Director of Public Policy, Greenlots, and John Truckenbrod. He is the founder and CEO of the EV Energy Group. All right, let's get right into the first slide. So about South Shore Clean Cities, we're headquartered in St. John, Indiana. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We were designated as the 71st Clean Cities Coalition on June 15th, 1999. South Shore Clean Cities is one of the U.S. Department of Energy's nearly 100 clean cities coalitions across the country. And our whole scope and the reason why we get up in the morning is to displace petroleum through the use of alternative fuel vehicles and idle reduction technologies. In the last decade alone, South Shore Clean Cities members have reduced greenhouse gas emissions by 607,000 tons and displaced over 93 million gas gallon equivalent. So our program that we host with the Michiana Area Council of Governments and Northwest Indiana Regional Planning Commissions, which are MPOs in our great state of Indiana, is our Green Fleet program. And what that basically means is we will look at different fleet statistics and offer expert opinions using our local calculators that are from the Department of Energy and the Environmental Protection Agency. The whole goal of the program is to improve the environmental performance of public, private, and nonprofit vehicle fleets across northern Indiana. Currently, we have 150 plus member fleets to help mitigate the barriers associated with sustainable transportation adoption while creating policies that support vehicle emission and petroleum use reductions. So how does it all work? We do it through kind of what we're going through today. A lot of different educational opportunities, including fuel and technology workshops, trainings, and seminars. We have annual recognition and certification for fleet leaders taking steps to improve environmental performance and efficiency. We also have branding and promotional tools that help fleets leverage earned certification status. We have a variety of different informational resources, including current technology options, market conditions, laws and incentives, connections with vendors offering sustainable transportation options through a variety of different fleets and fuels. We also offer funding assistance with grant opportunities that combine state and federal incentive programs. This professional consultation, including a green fleet audit and emissions quantification, will be presented via a physical document. So the first step in all of this is getting the necessary data that is needed to complete, which includes your annual fuel usage, annual miles traveled, and hours used. Total number of vehicles and equipment is considered across the whole fleet. We're needing vehicle and equipment type, make and model, fuel type, average vehicle and equipment life. We also look at the downtime for fueling and maintenance and fuel cost. So step two is we're going to use all that data that we collected and put it into a report while we're looking through our different calculators in order to give you the different cost comparisons with various fuels and vehicle types. We're looking at the current availability and location of fueling options. And we're personalizing this to different recommendations on a short and a long-term fleet purchase plans. And that being said, we're going to be doing this to what's important to you and identifying what your needs are. We're going to provide a total cost of ownership and return on investment analysis. We're also going to offer some suggestions for implementing cost-saving programs and trainings such as idle reduction. We're going to provide information on potential funding opportunities to best leverage sustainable transportation investments. So with all these different projects and fuels that are coming above and beyond what is currently going on right now, there is future and current funding that we can bring into any project that we're working on through a variety of different entities that offer from annual funding to significant funding through the Indiana Volkswagen settlement. This is a great time to start working with South Shore Clean Cities. In addition, there is going to be some EV infrastructure funding that is available and will be due at the end of September. And once again, thank you very much. And there's our contact information. If you have any questions that you might have on greening your fleet and looking at additional fleets and fuels that we can include into a green fleet audit, please contact us today. All right, so getting to our first speaker today, this is going to be Brian Levin. He is the Regional Director of Midwest for ChargePoint. Brian, go ahead.
Thank you. This is Brian Levin. As mentioned, I'm the Regional Director, live in Chicagoland, and appreciate everyone's time. Thank you to South Shore Clean Cities for inviting us today, and wish we could be there in person to meet everybody. Just a real quick overview on ChargePoint. Founded in 2007, we've been at this for quite a bit. We hold about 30 patents in the networked charging vertical. Over 700 employees with over 200 engineering staff. We do have a full support center in Scottsdale, Arizona that takes driver calls 24/7, 365. And as you can see here by the map, we've got offices throughout and local sales reps throughout Europe and North America as well. We have charging stations in every state, over 100,000 ChargePoint spots. We also have roaming agreements with other manufacturers as well and other networks to allow for drivers to seamlessly go from one network to another. We've got over 60% of Fortune 100 companies are our customers, and again, we've got stations throughout the state of Indiana, throughout the Midwest, and throughout the country. I think it's imperative to talk about the EV industry before you talk about EV charging. So as you can see by the slide, pretty much every auto manufacturer is invested, committed, and ready to go in terms of EVs. We've got partnerships with many of the auto manufacturers and a testing lab where they actually bring their vehicles to our facilities in California and test the vehicles before launch. Many of these auto manufacturers work with ChargePoint to get telematics into GPS systems and ChargePoint cards into glove box, etc. But the takeaway really is, whether you look at GM, whether you look at Ford, whether you look at Volvo on down, Daimler, each and every one of these autos are committed to EVs. Tremendous growth year over year. We're seeing exponential growth in this industry, obviously led by Tesla and GM and Nissan on down. The autos are really invested heavily into this space. I think when you start looking at EV charging, it's really not just a blanket benefit. You have to really look at each vertical. There's a reason why a specific customer or specific entity wants to put in EV charging. Obviously, with workplaces, they want to attract talent and retain talent, improve productivity, achieve sustainability goals. Employees view EV charging almost like a bonus or a boost in salary. Fleets could lower transportation costs and really scale seamlessly with electric vehicles and charging and proactively manage expenses. Obviously, multifamily and commercial properties want to attract tenants and retain them. And retailers, for example, see the average shopper spending up to 3 times longer in the store. Once plugged in, obviously they want to get a charge and will walk around and shop and buy more stuff. So when you look at charging, obviously in EVs, there's really different types of vehicles now. You have ride sharing that are going electric. You've got personal vehicles, and then you've got fleet vehicles delivering goods and services. And as we know today, more and more things are getting delivered to home and delivered in new ways. And I believe we're at the forefront of this new fueling model, a new transportation model. We do have a flexible integrated vertical solution where we handle the cloud, we handle the hardware, we handle the network, we handle payment processing support. So it's really easy as a charging station owner to really have one company to contact when there's an issue, and we can seamlessly address any need that comes up. And then obviously as a business, you're trying to attract drivers. You're not just a parking operator, you might be a retailer, a business, and it's about connecting drivers and having tools to help promote turnover, et cetera. So I'm going to skip through this and just start getting into a little bit of the nitty gritty. So ChargePoint, we've got the experience. We have a scalable portfolio with multi-faceted products, best-in-class services. So we have maintenance programs that are proactively monitored, so we can literally detect an issue, ship part, roll truck, and have anything addressed in the field. And then obviously the highest quality of products on the marketplace by far. So I'm going to skip through these just in the interest of time. We do have quite a few stations in Indiana, and many EV drivers have ChargePoint cards. So on the left, you can just see some of our data from our own stations. So for example, in 2019, we had over 39,000 charging sessions in the state of Indiana. You can see greenhouse gas savings, and really it's about network charging, the ability to capture data. You can see on the bottom right quadrant, you can see the time that people are charging at our commercial stations. So obviously there's spikes in the morning and then in the afternoon. And then on the right, I think is a really cool map that really no matter where you put charging stations in Indiana, we do have drivers that have accounts set up, they have a card, they have an app ready to go, and they'll be able to find a station, pay for it, and have the app ready to go. So we really do believe in network charging, smart chargers versus non-networked. Both a non-networked and a smart charger can dispense electricity, and then it really just stops there. Really where it comes in, network charging comes in ChargePoint is we do give visibility to drivers so they can see where stations are located, how much they cost, if they're available, if they're broken, God forbid, and from the driver experience, really understand where they can head to and have the ability to charge. We have really cool things called waitlists. So if your station's in use, you can tap your card or your phone or your watch and get in line. And when it's your turn, you'll be notified that you have, call it 20 minutes or 30 minutes, however long it's designated, to return to the station, plug in, and you'll be the only one who can use it. Access control. So we have many customers that decide they want to restrict access or just give special pricing to loyalty card holders, or employees might pay $1 an hour and visitors may pay $2 an hour. Having that flexibility and the ability to kind of turn the knobs however you want, and create different pricing and access groups is critical as the market grows and as more people become aware of the stations. Obviously, you can recover revenue, so we will handle the charging fees for the driver and the station owner, and we'll remit payment, whatever that might be. We'll never tell our customers what to charge for charging. You have a full suite of reports, so you can see how often they're being used, how many unique drivers, what zip code they're coming from on down, which is critical as you want to scale your EV charging needs. You can obviously see which stations are getting more use than the others and how much revenue you've collected. So it's critical as you look at EV charging to know that you have real-time visibility into the utilization. Keep going here. We do have the most robust suite of products for EV charging in the world. So we have everything from home stations to fleet and multifamily specific stations. The CT4000s are our workhorse level 2 station. It's got cable management, video screens, the ability to brand, anodized aluminum so they don't rust. Very, very commercial grade stations. And then on the right, you'll see we have many different modular variations of our DC fast chargers. So we have 62.5 kW stations. Those can be paired together to output 125 kW, and then our Express Plus line, which could deliver up to 500 kW. We did purchase an XUL testing lab, so everything that we send out, everything we create gets rigorous testing. So as high quality as it can get, and we guarantee it. These things go through, you name it, whether it's temperature testing, UV, swing arm cycling, cable loads, solar, dust and salt exposure, wind resistance on down. Just got to be careful here in the Midwest that you don't put out products that don't last in the climate and conditions, and our stations go through very, very rigorous testing. A really cool thing that we do is partner with the autos. So when you get an EV, many times more than not, you'll see a ChargePoint branded card by the auto manufacturer in the glove box to make life super easy for the driver. As a station owner, being able to capture data is important, but having it tabulated and summarized for you is important also. So this is your dashboard. You can drill into specific reports, but you can see your station status, how often it's being used, how many different people are using it, driver tips, so drivers can actually enter tips and comments, and it'll get fed into your dashboard, which is super easy. You can see how long your average session is. So it might be, in this circumstance, an hour and 59 minutes. Of that hour, 59 minutes, an hour and 44 people are charging, and 15 minutes people are idle. So obviously very in-depth reporting, and here's more of a list of the types of reports you can run. So greenhouse gas savings, peak occupancy, on down. I just hit my 10-minute mark, so I'm going to just stop after the next slide. But our app is incredible. Shows you green, available, blue, and use stations, pictures, navigation to the station. We're embedded in Apple Maps, Google Maps, Waze. Tap to charge is probably the coolest thing. You can take your iPhone or your Android or your watch and just tap it on the station. It'll register who you are and unlock the station, and you're ready to go. So you don't really need to fumble around for a card or anything like that. Really appreciate everyone's time. Here's my contact info, and we're looking forward to doing a lot of work, continued work in Indiana. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you, Brian. All right. So coming up next, we have Josh Cohen. He is the Director of Public Policy over at Greenlots. Thank you very much, Josh. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
All right. Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for inviting Greenlots to participate in this webinar. And thank you to everyone who is on this webinar. As Ryan mentioned, I lead policy engagement in Indiana for Greenlots and several other states. I want to just take a couple minutes to hit on Greenlots, and then I want to spend most of my time kind of in an educational way about charging and some considerations to think about if you are thinking of purchasing charging or going electric. And the two main takeaways I hope you come away with are, first of all, whatever fleet you may have, whatever property you may have, if you're thinking of going electric, it is absolutely possible. If nothing else, I hope you come away from this presentation knowing that it is doable. And the second main takeaway is unless you're just maybe buying one charging station and one EV, there's a lot more to going electric than just buying a charging station and just buying electric vehicles. So make sure you're talking to the right people, both within your organization as well as seeking expert advice from companies who are in the industry. So that said, briefly about Greenlots, we are an electric vehicle charging technology company. Our core product is software, but we have a number of partnerships with leading providers in the industry. So depending on what a customer wants, we can provide full turnkey installation of smart networked charging stations. We can provide driver-facing apps. For instance, Ford Motors hired Greenlots to develop the electric vehicle integration into the Ford Pass app. And we do everything in between. So our customers include electric utilities, municipalities, retail, apartment building, workplaces, and more. As this slide shows, we were founded over 10 years ago, and we were bought by Shell early in 2019. And what that says to me is a couple things. It says, one, Shell is indeed transitioning from being an oil and gas major to really being a 360-degree energy company. And the other thing it says is that majors like Shell see electrification as a legitimate investment. And Greenlots is just one of several EV charging firms in the industry that have been acquired by larger energy-related companies in recent years, which is indicative of the industry overall. All right, so I'm just going to breeze through these slides. Brian covered some of this in the previous presentation. The key point of this slide is that one of the key barriers to EV adoption has been the relative lack of availability of EV models. That is absolutely changing. It's already changed, and EVs, in fact, are going to become the norm sooner rather than later. The other main barrier to EV adoption has been the lack of charging, or at least the perceived lack of charging availability. And there's some exciting new developments. Electrify America is a private company. It's a wholly owned subsidiary of Volkswagen, which is investing $2 billion in deploying charging stations over 10 years. And you can see in that blue line that cuts across the middle of the country from Washington, D.C. to L.A. This is just in June 2020. They just announced the completion of that. And so what that means is, if you have an EV and you want to drive from coast to coast, you can do it. You don't have to worry about range anxiety. You will have, just on the Electrify America network, a fast charging station available to you an average of every 70 miles. The green line at the bottom, they expect to open within a couple months. And you'll also notice, back to the blue line, the coast-to-coast route that just was completed, that passes right through the heart of Indiana. Just a point about Electrify America. Electrify America hired Greenlots to develop and provide the back-end platform, so for all of the nationwide fast charging stations on the EA network. So every fast charger that Electrify America operates, they manage on a Greenlots platform. Despite that, millions of charging stations are going to be needed, and a big reason for that is because there's no one way that people charge. There's multiple use cases for electric vehicles, and there's multiple ways and times in which people are going to need to charge. So for those of you who are on this webinar, the fact that you are considering this for your workplace, for whatever facility you have, it's good that you're doing that. So for these next few slides, I want to just briefly cover some high-level considerations to be thinking about when you're thinking about going electric. The first one, this is no doubt basic to many of you who are already on this webinar, but just to understand what we mean. I'm sorry, the slides keep advancing. When we talk about level 1 charging, that is essentially plugging into a typical wall outlet. Level 2 charging is higher capacity. That's typically a 240 volt outlet. And for a typical vehicle, that'll charge up at around 25 miles of battery range per hour, sometimes more. But a common scenario for level 2 charging is at a workplace where you can pull up, plug in, 8 hours later, you head home, and you will have added at least 200 miles of range or so to your battery. Level 3 charging, fast charging, is the sky's the limit. It starts usually at 50 kilowatts, and we're seeing 100 kilowatt models, 150, even 350 kW super fast chargers, and they are for a number of applications. This slide speaks to one of my key takeaways I hope you come away with, which is, if you're thinking of, and I don't know what I'm doing, I keep advancing, but if you're thinking of electrifying your fleet or your facility, two things. Make sure you're talking to all the stakeholders within your organization, the facility manager, the person who handles electricity, person who handles permits, to think about all this stuff up front so you're identifying the issues you need to identify, and that you're also talking to experts on the outside, industry companies such as Greenlots, who have people who can handle this from soup to nuts. Value-added resellers like John, who's going to be presenting in a moment, can often offer customers a range of products to meet their needs. So make sure you're talking to people who've been down this road before and can give you good advice. One common concern is future-proofing assets, particularly in public agencies where there's a concern about stranded assets with taxpayer dollars. OCPP stands for Open ChargePoint Protocol. In a nutshell, this is an industry standard protocol to ensure that hardware and the software are interoperable. And if there's an issue with your software provider and you want to swap it out for a different network after having your station for a year, OCPP lets you do that. If you Google Open Charge Alliance, it's an open source platform built by the industry, and there's even certifications available where companies can either self-certify or use third-party independent testing labs to be certified for OCPP. Unmanaged charging has the potential to create problems both at the grid level as well as at a property. The answer to address that is to make sure that you do have smart chargers, both as the previous, as you saw in the previous presentation, as well as in this presentation. For instance, if you have a facility, you want to make sure that when the vehicles are charging, they don't exceed the power capacity of a circuit. You want to make sure, if you can, that you're charging at a lower electricity rate and you don't trigger a higher demand charge, for instance. So smart charging is key to managing the load. It's also key to giving you control, to giving you visibility, to determining who can charge, how much they pay when they charge. For instance, do you want to allow employees to charge for free, but allow members of the public to pay a fee to charge? Smart charging lets you do all that. All right. Success stories and use cases. In my last few seconds, I just want to highlight 3 quick success stories. The first one is in next door in Ohio. Columbus Yellow Cab is electrifying their fleet. Greenlots provided the fast charging stations for their depot, and they've since gotten a grant to install 3 charging hubs out in the community, not only for their drivers while they're between fares, but also for public charging. If you are a fleet operator for a municipal fleet like a public works department or a health department, and you're concerned about reliability, I would just offer that Los Angeles Police Department is electrifying their fleet. And so if a first responder agency like LAPD is confident that they can electrify their fleet, I would offer that pretty much any municipal agency can do it. And Greenlots is honored to be partnering with LAPD to help them. And finally, here we go. EVs are not just light duty vehicles. Even Class 8 trucks, heavy duty trucks, are now electrifying, and Greenlots is proud to be partnering with Volvo to help them electrify the nation's first all-electric Class 8 trucks. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to the questions.
Okay, John Truckenbrod here. I'm John Truckenbrod. I'm the founder and CEO of EV Energy Group. EV Energy Group sells EV charging software, equipment, and advertising solutions to accelerate the adoption of electric vehicles. We're a Midwest-based company with nationwide sales outreach. A little bit about me. I've been in the advertising industry for about 3 decades already. I'm just dated myself there. But I was fortunate enough to own a production company here in Chicago. I worked for all the biggest agencies. I worked for Leo Burnett and Ogilvy and DDB. Worked on huge accounts. I worked on McDonald's and Disney and Samsung and Budweiser, and that was all great. But the world constantly is changing, right? Well, television commercials are not necessarily as effective as they used to be. So I sold all my assets in television, and I didn't know what I was going to do next, but I bought an all-electric vehicle about 4 years ago. And ever since then, all I wanted to do was be immersed in this space. So here's what I'm doing. I'm taking my skills at selling hamburgers, and I'm trying to apply them to selling EV infrastructure. And I'm very excited to do that, and that's where my story starts here, okay? Changing the slide, here we go. Okay, so electric vehicle adoption remains slow in the United States. Today, the US EV market is still at only about 2%, and half of those vehicles are in California. We have to do better than that. EV Energy Group accelerates that adoption through strategic partnerships, advertising, and innovation. Let's talk a little bit about the advertising industry as it relates to electric vehicles. The electric vehicle market size will reach $900 billion by 2026. The electric vehicle charging station market is expected to grow and is growing from $3 billion to $30 billion by 2023. Automotive digital ad spending, and that's only digital, will reach $18 billion by 2020. That's a lot of money. Our vision is to capture some of that ad spending and use it to build EV infrastructure. So EV Energy Group's full circle strategy is this. It's to partner with multiple key industry stakeholders. Those stakeholders are utilities, OEMs, infrastructure vendors, retailers, cities, and technology. They all share interest in this EV marketplace that's continuously just growing like a tsunami. By working together as a community, we can make the e-mobility transition a reality, and hopefully sooner than later. Okay, EV Energy has been actively building trusted relationships. Our turnkey EV charging solutions start with our partnerships with industry-leading network software groups, Greenlots, EV Connect, and Hey. These cloud-based network software solutions allow EV drivers to utilize feature-rich mobile apps that make charging simple and reliable. And these same networks also allow site hosts to operate all charging aspects from a simple dashboard. This includes charger availability, payments, maps, uptime monitoring, and more things than that. All of our software solutions and hardware products adhere to Open ChargePoint protocol, and Josh mentioned this, OCPP. OCPP is very important, we believe, because it gives you the power to choose the network provider that seems right for you. And if for any reason you wanted to switch, you could. And what this does is it avoids vendor lock-in. I guess the best way I can explain it is it's very much like a mobile phone. When the iPhone came out, originally it was just AT&T. You were kind of locked into that, but more and more options emerged. You could then, switch over to Sprint, switch over to Verizon, whatever works best for you. OCPP. We're hardware agnostic. This is a look at a few of the chargers in our portfolio, and it's been expanding. We have even more than this. Since everybody's charging needs tend to be unique, we have multiple hardware options for you, level 2, level 3, and high power, ultra fast charging. So our catalog covers chargers that work in your home, they work in multi-dwellings, they work in workplace, retail, fleet, utilities, and for municipalities. I wanted to call out one specific equipment vendor of major interest here in the Midwest, and that is EVbox. It's an NG company. EVbox is already in 55 countries, but Illinois is proud to say we're going to be their new headquarters, the new home of EVbox North America. All of EVbox, by the way, they're headquartered in Libertyville, Illinois. That's just 10 minutes from me, which is super exciting. All of EVbox North America's chargers will be manufactured here in Libertyville. Currently, EVbox has already deployed 120,000 ports worldwide, and the projections are 1 million more additional ports in the next 5 years. I love that aggressiveness. This slide is an example of what EV Energy might recommend to you as a site host as a hardware solution. It includes a combination of chargers. To the far left, we've got a retail-based level 2 charger. It's called the Icon by EVBox, 2 ports. This unit's about 6 feet tall. It's very affordable. It's won many design awards. It's been designed and created specifically for North America, has just gone into production, and is being manufactured right now, and is available, okay? The unit in the center is our own creation. It's called the EVMT. This is EV Energy Group's product. I'm gonna elaborate more on this in a second, but it is a media tower. And it also is a level 2 charger. This particular instance, I've got an EVBox charger mounted to the right side of it. That can be any charger, but in this case, it's a EVBox business line. And then you've got the Ultronic by EVBox. That is a 100 kW charger. It can be stacked all the way up to 350 kW, and eventually it's going to be 500 kW as well. Okay, this is the EV media tower I mentioned. That is our own unique product. It's got a large 55-inch digital screen in the front of it, okay? And what that does is it allows you to communicate with the public. A site host would own, and this is key, they would own all of that media inventory on that screen. So they could choose to run public service announcements, EV incentives, Amber alerts, tell people when when's the best time of day to charge your EV, whatever you want to do. You can also integrate some advertising. Maybe you choose to integrate all advertising. That's up to you as the owner of this device. But if you do choose to add some ads or all ads, you could potentially pay for this machine very quickly. You could probably make 50 times more money with this selling advertising than you would over just simply selling electricity. So we believe an integration of advertising is a really smart thing for EV adoption. And by the way, we're agnostic as to what charger you hang on this. You could hang any level 2 charger of your liking and run any network on it. So there you have it. Also, we've got this device. This is just a standalone digital out-of-home screen. Has no charger attached to it whatsoever. Maybe you've already got a stable of chargers. You've already got a bunch of DC fast chargers at a site. You don't need a level 2 charger. This is your solution for integrating some advertising to help pay for everything, right? I know Coca-Cola alone spends $3 billion a year on advertising, and there you go. Okay, so mobile, don't forget this screen. I mentioned earlier that the advertising media market is $900 billion a year. That's globally, and that's a huge number. Half of that money is spent on that screen, the screen we all carry around in our pocket. And that's why TV commercials are worth so much less. We have not forgotten that screen, and all of our marketing efforts go onto that screen as well. Interesting story about what just recently happened. A Model 3 mistook a Burger King sign as a stop sign, and it actually stopped the car. And when it was in autopilot, Burger King heard about that, and they immediately turned that into an ad that smart vehicles love Burger King. It's kind of brilliant, right? This is Evan. How do you get ads onto these screens? Well, we've created Evan. It's an EV advertising network, or evadnet.com. And what Evan is it's a full-blown ad agency. It's in its infancy, but we believe that there's going to be ads on all those screens in these vehicles and on chargers and on mobile phones that are connected to EV networks. We're super excited and putting this together right now. A couple more things really quick. Signage. Don't forget signage. There's no fueling station, no gas station in the world that doesn't have a sign. There's a lot of chargers out there, and yet the public doesn't see them and doesn't believe they exist. We need to be seen. Don't forget signs. We've got partners that can build these, and we're ready to do that. And then solar canopies. They don't have to even necessarily be solar, but canopies to accompany chargers, to keep people out of the elements. When they're solar, you have another revenue stream, and we can even put monitors into these solar canopies to help pay for everything. See how that works? And I want to thank everybody for allowing me to speak today, and all the other great speakers on this panel today. I've been driving an EV for 4 great years now. The experience has been unbelievable. It's been nothing but positive. And my favorite subject is talking about EV charging. Please contact me anytime. Thank you.
All right, terrific. Great presentations to you all, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to speak with us today. I have a couple of questions before we end it. I'll address you if we have for specific questions, and if it's just a general question, I'll leave it up to everyone. Now, this is going to be just a general question for everyone, and you can go answer if you like to. Now, for everyone, what would be the first piece of advice you would have for someone looking at installing a level 2 station?
This is Brian Levin. I would say the first thing I would try to evaluate is why you are putting it in. Is it, again, to attract shoppers or tenants or employees, etc.? And then I would right away say whatever you decide to do today, plan ahead for tomorrow. So if you're trenching concrete or running conduit, we'll never try to oversell a solution, but a high percentage of our customers are repeat customers. So whenever folks oversize conduit or stub in for future installs during construction, it pays dividends in the future. Obviously, the costs on a per port basis to when you've already poured concrete and you've already put conduit in the ground is pennies on the dollar than having to retrofit again. So why you're doing it, and think ahead towards the future.
Good, I like that.
John here, I just want to add to that. I just encourage people to get started today, because where are we going to be? Where are you going to be in 5 years? Where are you going to be in 10 years? Let's look forward, right? In talking to even like a multi-dwelling building, they still are scratching their heads why one tenant in that building with 100 units, why should because of one tenant we put an EV charging station in? We don't put gas stations in for everybody else. But if you look forward and you think about all the electric vehicles coming, you're going to have a hard time selling those condos or those apartments if you don't have infrastructure. As a matter of fact, I've heard stories here in Chicago where people have canceled multi-million-dollar condo deals because there was no place to plug their car in. Right? There you go.
No EV clause. Wow. Josh, did you have anything to add?
I would just piggyback on what John and Brian mentioned and say that when it comes to the installations, depending on the location, oftentimes the charger itself is actually not even the majority of the cost. It really depends. And so to the point Brian made, when you are going to the expense, when you do make the decision and you're getting ready to actually do the install, even if you don't think you have the need for it today, take advantage of the fact that you're going to have people on site doing the work to at least create the conduit and the capacity for future installations.
Thank you. Brian, I'm going to go back to you with this one. How necessary is the deployment of DC fast charging stations or high-powered stations to ultimately reduce that range anxiety for new EV buyers?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that we do when we have requests for DC fast chargers, again, going back to my first point is why. So, obviously we really believe in DC fast chargers. We've got a tremendous product that's field replaceable units and beautiful LCD and LED screens. But, ultimately it comes down to why and where. So, we're seeing a lot of fueling and convenience store operators putting them in, off the highway. We're working with a ton of retailers to put them in. Fleets and municipalities are starting to put them in as well. But we do ask, would a level 2 work for this situation? If not, we'll work with the customer on the DC side of things. But ultimately, it comes down to convenience. It comes down to the fact that drivers want to charge pretty quickly. I would say, for many fleet situations, you can charge overnight. But if there's en route charging as well, that's when obviously DC charging would be required. Some retailers just don't want people in the store for 20 minutes, and they'd rather have people in there for an hour or two. But really showing them that as the car batteries and ranges get bigger, DC fast charging is going to become a more critical component of not only around town, but destination charging as well. And, I think we'd all agree that with range anxiety still prevalent in the industry and within consumers' minds, that having more and more fast chargers around will definitely increase not only awareness, but comfort with EV charging and the ability to get around, again, around town and beyond.
Absolutely. I think we're seeing a lot of that from FHWA and local state entities identifying corridors for some different funding opportunities becoming available.
Ryan?
Now, yes.
Yeah, this is Josh with Greenlots. And so that's an important point that you and Brian just mentioned in terms of how do people access charging when they're not just staying in one city or one town, but they want to move, either between states or they want to travel from one end of the state to the other. And as you mentioned, Ryan, there is a proposal out there that the Indiana Energy Association has put forward that would establish a statewide public charging network along interstates and other major highways through Indiana, called the Heartland, or the Crossroads of America charging network. And when it comes to paying for it, you mentioned the Indiana Volkswagen settlement early on in your remarks. And so at least as of the time we're recording this webinar, that application is currently live. I believe the application deadline is September 23rd, 2020. But for folks who are thinking about installing DC fast charging in particular, level 2 as well, but particularly DC fast charging, and are wondering how you're going to put the dollars together to pay for it. If your property is located in proximity to some of these major highways throughout Indiana, that could be a huge resource for you to help you afford the cost and the installation.
Absolutely, and we're going to have a webinar following this webinar to discuss those different types of opportunities that are going to be coming available through the Indiana Volkswagen settlement. Now, John, it's 2020. We're a data-driven society. Why is it so important to have smart charging or connectivity associated with the charging stations?
Oh, that data is really important too, especially to utilities. They, as we get more and more people charging, right? We're going to want to absolutely be using smart chargers so that the grid doesn't get overwhelmed by everybody plugging in at exactly the same time. That data will allow the chargers themselves to throttle down or at least communicate to the users that they're in peak demand periods, et cetera. But that data is super valuable as to where we're going with all of this. And I think we're still in such early days. There's a lot of fear that we're going to overwhelm the grid. I've also heard the contrary. We're actually going to help the grid because we are approaching this correctly, and all of that data is going to help balance things, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, Josh, we just unveiled or had a ribbon cutting on the first electric bus in the state of Indiana. As the heavy duty and medium duty market are continually coming online and becoming more and more available, what do you see in the near future as far as what that means for adoption of goods movement?
Well, it's interesting. I actually think that some of the medium duty vehicles, such as school buses, such as transit buses even, are going to be electrified more quickly than our entire vehicle fleet taken overall. And part of that is because the total cost of ownership, even today, with today's technology, today's battery capacities, the total cost of ownership is already less expensive for a fully electric school bus, for instance, than it is for a comparable diesel bus, for instance. And so, you know, commercial or fleet managers are incredibly cost sensitive, cost attuned. And so because of that, it's not about, I mean, forget other considerations and other benefits to electrification, but you're already seeing that people are making the switch. And so when it comes to charging, I think certain applications such as school buses that generally have pretty fixed and consistent routes where we know what time they're going to be charging, where we know how many miles they're going to be traveling per day, they're really well suited for determining what the charging needs are going to be and how to really optimize the charging infrastructure to provide the most economic charging for that fleet manager. And it's not just school buses, it's, you mentioned, I believe, delivery vehicles and other types of vehicles. The technology, fortunately, has matured to the point where now is the time to be having that conversation.
Absolutely. I'm going to wrap it up here. Gentlemen, do you have anything else to share on this webinar? All right. Well, with that being said, coming up, we have 2 interesting webinars that relate to electric vehicles and the infrastructure needed. We have our community electric vehicle charging webinar coming up on July 7th. And then we also have the Indiana VW mitigation funding webinar. That's going to be with Sean Seals from IDEM, and that's going to take place on July 9th. I'd like to thank our speakers again, and thank you all for watching the webinar. Have a great day, and we look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan.